Welcome back to the episode of the Startup Therapy Podcast. This is Ryan Rutan, joined as always by Wil Schroter, the founder and CEO of Startups.com. Hey, Will, I was coming up with this cool plan to make Startups.com a lot bigger by saying no to anything we've never done before, just saying yes to doing exactly what we've always done. Does that feel right to you?
Yeah, because that's how startups grow. Startups grow by just only doing the things that they've done before and not stretching at all.
Yes.
We're not pushing any buttons. Yeah. It's amazing to me to watch because most reasonable people who, by the way, aren't founders, right? So they come into this game.
Yeah, I was going to say, you lost me a reasonable people, Will. Tell me who those are.
Yeah, exactly, right? They come into this game and they're like, hey, I'm being asked to like say and commit to a lot of things I can't commit to. Like, how could I possibly do that? Customers are asking me. Can we do this next thing? We've never done that. How can I possibly say yes? Investors are asking me, how are we going to get to $50 million in 4 years? I don't know. How can I possibly tell them yes? This doesn't make any sense. The funny thing is, you're right.
Yeah.
It absolutely doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make any sense.
And you have to do it.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we unpack today. How do I say yes to everything and then go and figure out how to make it happen?
Right. I think it's an important concept to get to, right? We're not asking you to say yes to something no you can't do. We're asking you to say yes to things you haven't tried yet or haven't done yet or haven't thought through yet. Right? There's a difference between committing to something and guaranteeing it, right? We can commit to making the effort. We can't guarantee that it will get the result. There's startups in a nutshell, right? I think that is what we're here to do.
I think most of us, if you haven't started in the startup game, kind of like you and I have, it's kind of all we've known. But for most people, again, they're reasonable people. They come from companies or jobs where there is certainty. They come from like their last job, they ran a restaurant. When you ordered food, they had food. If they didn't have the food, they didn't deliver the food. Like, it was pretty straightforward. They worked at Big Co. and they could say, we either have this in inventory or we do not. And you could make great binary decisions based on certainties. Now you have none of that.
Yeah, certainties. That's it, right? Nothing was a variable in any of those cases, right? It was just like, do we have or do we not have? Those were both constants. Either had or you didn't. This is something we do or something we don't do. So you're living in a world of constants. And I talk about this a lot on the podcast. Startups are the opposite, right? We are a world of variables that we are slowly chipping away at, trying to turn into some level of constancy, right? That's it.
Yeah, exactly. Early on, I didn't know this. Again, most people don't know this because it makes no sense, right? We're supposed to say, yes, we can to things that haven't been done yet. And that's terrifying. And again, I get that. It's terrifying. So there's no version here where we're going to say you should feel comfortable about it. But I think before we get into how this affects how we talk to customers, how we talk to investors, even our own staff, I think the first thing we should do is just kind of caveat, and you touched on this. We're not talking about lying to people. That's not what we're saying. So here's the distinction we'll keep coming back to. The distinction is this. We're talking about things you potentially could do and have not done yet. We're not talking about things that clearly cannot be done, right? That's lying. That's a totally different, yeah.
Right. Look, if you ask me, Ryan, can you shoot a three-pointer? I can say yes to that, right? Have I? No. Could I reasonably do it? Yes, probably. If you ask me, can you dunk? I have to say no to that one, right? Time has passed. Not going to happen, right? So there's some things we can commit to. There's some things that we just can't, right? We know it's outright impossible or not practical or something that's just so far out of the current scope that it doesn't even make sense to try. Sure, it's a no. But to your point, how the hell are we going to grow if we just keep doing exactly the same things, right? Doesn't make any sense. We can't. By nature of what a startup is, it has to do everything different all the time because it didn't do anything until now. Now it's doing very little. Now we want it to do a lot more.
Exactly. In services, companies run into this all the time, right? You and I have run services companies, so we've been through this. And the bane of their existence, especially early on when they're trying to grow, is how do I commit to client work if I don't have the people to fulfill that client work? And the answer is always, how are you going to have more people if you don't commit to work you don't have yet?
There's a catch-22, but it's only a catch-22 if you keep saying no, right? You're stuck in that cycle. If you keep saying no, you'll stay there. There's zero chance you escape that. There's no other way. It's like, well, how will we make that up? Well, with volume. Nope. You just never get there, right? Nothing happens. You have to start to say yes. Does it always go to plan? Does it always work out perfectly? Do you have to push team or people or hire or maybe even go upside down in a job? I did this more than once. I'm sure you did the same thing, Will. where I paid more to get something done than I charged for, just so I could say yes to it, so I could learn the capability, start to deliver that service to clients, see how it went, and decide whether I want to do that again ever or not, right? It's not binary. It's not just yes or no. We can explore along the way.
It is. And, it's a couple things. Like early on, again, let's talk about, we're building, let's say, a services business. And this applies to every business. So I'm just using services because folks that are listening that run a services business or have been involved in a service business, this is so obvious. And I'll give you an example. Right now, I'm running around, because as you know, Ryan, we're the early process of building our home. And I'm running around talking to all of these contractors, right? Trying to give them my money.
Lots of inflexible service businesses.
It's the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen. And I've never talked to so many people in my life that are so unwilling to grow their own companies, right? I'm like, hey, here's a project that would be phenomenal for you. I don't have the guys to do it right now.
I'm handing you the opportunity and the money to go hire the people so that the next time this question comes up, you could say yes.
Oh my gosh, right? Now look, in some cases, you don't want to grow, right? And you're fighting with the people you have. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about people who do want to grow. I'll give you another example. Early in my career, when I was just starting to learn this, when I was just starting to learn that the answer is yes, and then you figure it out, I'm in a pitch meeting with a friend of ours who used to be on the team here at startups.com, great guy. We're in a pitch, and we were both in college at the time. This is very early, right? I started talking to some campus organization, Ryan, when you were on the same campus, you probably saw them. Anyway, we're sitting there giving the pitch, and this is like 95-ish, so really early in the internet, right?
The internet still came on a 3.5 floppy.
This is almost like out of a movie. She asked us, she's like, can you put e-commerce into our site? Because she had just read e-commerce in Time magazine like yesterday. She didn't even know what the context was. That made no sense for what her request was, right?
The simultaneous opposite answer outcome.
Exactly. As I'm mouthing yes, he says no. And I'm like, wait, what? Right? And I look over at him, and he knows the look, right? So at least he was aware enough to know, like, okay, let's like Will do talkie. And so we get out of the meeting, and I talked through it, but like we get out of the meeting, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? He's like, we don't have any developers that can do that, right? And to be fair, like they didn't exist yet. Because people are still figuring out what the hell e-commerce was, right? I'm like, how do you think we're ever going to find them? And so, we said yes to that project. We built e-commerce, right? And we hired our first developer who wound up being phenomenal. And what led to what would become a team of 50 developers, right? From that one kind of initial hire and kind of like building that practice. And I thought to myself, what if we had said no? Like, what if that, like, what if it's like, hey, we don't hire developers, we don't have developers, so we say no? That would have been a completely different business. It would have like literally never existed. Unbelievable.
You have to say yes to things outside your capability. When you have almost no capabilities, what's the other alternative, right? You wouldn't have said yes to your first client. I did the same thing. I think I've told this story on the podcast before, but the way my agency started was running into a high school classmate who was like, oh, hey, you're good with computers, right? Yeah, that was absolutely true.
Right.
Could you build us a website?
Yeah.
Sure. Right?
Build website.
Absolutely. I'd never built a website before. I literally, you were there last week, I think, Micro Center. I walked into the book section, which they probably don't even have anymore. Walked into the book section, grabbed the HTML guide that existed at the time, about 9,000 pages. And by the next Thursday, I had built my first site. Right? So I had to say yes. If I hadn't said yes, if I just waited for somebody to ask me to only do the things I already knew how to do, boring dude, right? It'd be all be really bad startups.
It's unbelievable. And again, fast forward through other startups that we've done, right? And all of the different like trials and tribulations with all of them. Here's a good example. We buy Zirtual on a Sunday night. Monday morning, we're running a 450-person virtual assistant business that we've never run before, right? Have we done that? No. Could we do that? Yeah, it went phenomenally well, right? So if all we're looking at basing our future is our past, we're screwed. Like startups just don't work like that, but it's hard to get comfortable.
It is hard to get comfortable. I think it's, and like there's plenty of stories, and I think there's plenty of ways that this manifests. What are the top three for you? Like, where do we see this most? We think about like, where do we need to say yes, where we might be more likely saying no, based on just the history of being a reasonable person before we started our startup companies.
I'm going to start because it's universal, which is yes to customers, right? And again, let's go back to our premise. Not yes to things that can't be done. If it literally can't be done, it can't be done, right? Do not lie to people, right? Yes to things we are capable. We may fail, but we are capable of making happen. Okay. So, let's talk about investors. We go to investors. Everyone stresses about the same thing. We do our whole workshops throughout the week on this, and talk to people and walk them through their pitch decks and financial projections and all that good stuff. They all say the same thing, which is, Will, you're telling me to project year 4, 50 million in revenue. I have $50 in revenue right now. How can I possibly stand up reasonably in front of anyone and tell them that I'm going to be at $50 million in 4 years? And I say, you don't. You say you might be at $50 million in 4 years, right? Like, you're not guaranteeing a damn thing. And I think that because we take these things in a different context. Let me give you an example. At a public company, Ryan, if you and I were a public company, you're the CEO, I'm the CFO, we're on an investor call, and we're talking about what earnings per share are going to be in the next quarter, we better be pretty damn accurate. But
yeah. Those are regulated statements at that point.
100%. And to be fair, unless we're Elon Musk, somehow like it all goes out. Say whatever you want, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, you don't say anything in a meeting. You tweet it, right? It's different.
Yeah. And so, but in that case, that is not a projection. It's a forecast. And I'll just put a slightly different spin on how people think it. A projection takes things and tries to project them. A forecast is based on things that have a history, right? Like the weather. When I see clouds going in this direction, I can forecast that it's likely going to rain, right? I have a voluminous amount of data.
You're using previous data points to draw a line into the future. At a startup phase, we're throwing darts. There are no data points to draw the line. Yep, that's it.
You bet. And I think on that one specifically, when folks are looking at their projections, in their pitch decks, et cetera, they get angsty because they're like, well, aren't I telling investors this is how much money you're going to make? No, and if the investors actually believe that you're saying it's going to be $50 million in 4 years, and that's magically going to happen, they're out of their minds.
Well, yeah, they just joined the friends, family, and fools round as the third category there.
Yeah, unfortunately. And again, by no means are we advocating deceiving anyone. What we are saying is a lot of our job is to create the future, which by definition is uncertain. By definition, it's uncertain.
Yeah, has to be.
It has to be. But we have to get comfortable with that. Staff, right? Picture this one. I've got this theory. I got to call it the Goodwill Hunting theory. Okay, which is kind of a dated reference if you think about it. Like Goodwill Hunting's got to be 20 years old. So anyways, so for people who've never heard of this famous movie,
it's got to be a little older than that, but okay, yeah.
Damn. Anyway, so the whole premise of the movie is that Matt Damon is like this schlub. He's like a janitor, but it turns out he's a total genius. He's at MIT or something like that, and he's writing like trigonometry on the board at night, and they find out he's a genius. Okay, the idea is that there are these diamonds in the rough that if you could just pull them, polish them, they would glow brightly, right? My theory is that within the staff, we have to find those diamonds, which makes asking them to do things they've never done before for the first time, putting them in positions for things that they have no business being in.
Yeah, saying yes when they want to do things they've never done.
Seeing them excel.
Again, in a corporate environment, the logic there would be, look, you got to go one rung on the ladder at a time. In a startup company, if somebody's asking to reach up 3-4 rungs in the ladder and try to do something they've never done that's above their pay grade, above their experience level, whatever it is, you can give them a shot, right? Like, not endlessly, right? You can't let everybody do something that's not their job, but you can carve out some time to let people do things and give them a shot, right? The startup itself is taking a shot in the dark. So who would we be as founders? Like, how much hypocrisy would be packed into that statement? Like, I don't want you to try anything you've never done before. Isn't that what we're here to do as an entire organization? Like, yeah, true. But anyways.
Yeah, well, okay, so play this out a little bit. So in my experience, this is my mileage with my Goodwill Hunting theory. It works 1 out of 20 times every time. Right. Holding one on, just to be clear, right? Yep. And so typically, though, like, it's not just that founders have such a big heart and they really want to see people succeed. Of course they want to see people succeed. What it's also is, we don't have a choice, right? This is the only developer I could afford, right? That's the only CFO I could afford, right? So I'm going all in because I don't have a choice. Now, here's what's fascinating about that to me. You and I had this unique ability early in our careers to put ourselves in a position where we could test our own goodwill hunting theory. And that's kind of what founders are doing, right? They're testing their own mettle, their own capability.
Making the bet on themselves. Yep.
Yeah. And, I think on the last podcast or the podcast before this, I talked about how, we did like our Lily pitch or something like that, and how I was like way out of my depth, right? I was like 22 years old or something like that, doing like a $250 million pitch. And what was fascinating to me is that at the beginning of that year, I was selling websites for food, right? Exchanging my services for food and being pretty excited about it. In the end of the year, we had a $250 million contract, which sounds bananas, and it is. What I'm trying to say, though, is I put myself in a position where I could stretch myself to see how far I could go, right? And it turned out it worked. It turned out like at 22, I had most of what I needed to do what I needed to do. Now imagine alternate universe of Wil, which I imagine quite a bit, who was still working at Best Buy, right? Making like $10 an hour in the Geek Patrol or whatever it was at the time, right? Like I could have just assumed been that guy.
Been hanging out with those sweet Bose speakers though, man. It wouldn't have been all bad. It wouldn't have been all bad.
But yeah, but like seriously, like it could just have soon been the opposite had I not said yes, in this case to myself, right? And by virtue of that, all the things I said yes to.
Something that's really funny about everything we talk about here is that none of it is new. Everything you're dealing with right now has been done 1,000 times before you, which means the answer already exists, you may just not know it, but that's okay. That's kind of what we're here to do. We talk about this stuff on the show, but we actually solve these problems all day long at groups.startups.com. So if any of this sounds familiar, stop guessing about what to do. Let us just give you the answers to the test and be done with it.
It's funny. I think that one of the challenges we have around saying yes to things is that we tend to treat those as like a much bigger decision than they really are. We say yes to a customer, for example, right? We say, yes, we can do that. And then we don't do it. Will we be the only time that person's ever been disappointed in their life? Will that be the only time is that the only reason we could fail with a client? Like we say yes to things we've already done. And sometimes we screw up projects, right? It happens. I'm sure you had projects that didn't go to plan. I certainly had websites and build outs that didn't go to plan, not because we'd never done it before. Something else came up, something happened, shit happens, right? And so I think the thing when we're saying yes to something we've never done before, the uncertainty of it scares us. And somehow we attach, at least I did, this permanency to it. Like if I say yes to this and we can't do it, it's game over. Rarely, right? Rarely is it game over, right? If we tell an investor that we're going to hit 50 million by year 5 and we only hit 30 million, is it game over? Do they come back and be like, hey, by the way, I recorded that presentation you gave to me and you said 50 by year 5 and it's only 30. So give me my money back right now, right? You can't do that, right? It's a projection, right? If we tell our team, yes, you can try to punch out of your weight class, we will let you develop a feature when all you've done so far is code Q&A and it doesn't go well. That person's not CTO forever, right? They had one project. So most of these things can be rolled back and they're not permanent out. I think that's something that we just really have to keep in mind, that there's no real permanency around saying yes to these things. You can say yes once and say no every other time after that if you want to. Feel free.
I agree. And also, to your point, we have this idea that it's a one-way street. We make this one cataclysmic, decision and it goes wrong. And then at that point, for some reason in our minds, we can't make any other decision after that. It's just like everything flows one way. And to be fair, that's like a pretty logical way to think because people only think in the abstract of what's present, right? It's hard for us to think of like things in the future that could have lots of variable outcomes. But I think for most of us, this idea of saying, and I'll figure it out is very foreign, I think for a lot of people, they look at it like, what do you mean figure it out? What if I don't figure it out? Who cares? You'll make a different move, right? Like,
what if you do, right? That's not what we're here to do. We're here to figure it out. I mean, there's plenty of examples of this, right? This is, big companies you've heard of have done exactly these things. If we go back in time, Dropbox, for example, Dropbox started marketing their product when it was just a concept video. They had people signing up for the service when all it was an explainer video. They had not figured out how to do the file transfer, any of it, right? It was just an explainer video. That was it. They started getting signups based on that, right? It's enough. It was enough for then, because why go and figure out the technical build if nobody wanted the damn thing, right? So we have to say, yes, we have this thing. It can help you transfer files. It's great. And here's what it looks like. Are you interested? Yes, I'm interested. Cool. We'll go build it now.
Here's what it could do.
Yeah, here's what it could do.
And Drew Houston could have looked at that and said, hey, I have no way to build that. Okay, that'd be one thing. But if he's like, hey, if people are interested in this, I could build it. Maybe I'll build it and it sucks, right? To be fair, maybe I build it and it sucks. But it doesn't mean I can't try. It doesn't mean I can't take a stab at it. And if it goes wrong, I can do right by people. If it goes wrong, I can go back and either give them their money back, build them a different product, delay another launch. I mean, there are other ways to get to the outcome that isn't abject failure across the board.
Yeah. And when you're talking about a product at that point costs dollars per month, again, I think people's disappointment had it gone completely the wrong way would have been fairly limited. Right? So we have to keep that in mind. Moving on to another example on the investor side, right? So because I think this is one that people really, really struggle with because it feels big, right? And in some cases, these are kind of the most, they're not bald-faced lies, but these are some of the biggest claims we'll make with the highest consequences, right? Because we're pitching for funding. Go back in time again, Bezos, right? He had a little platform he went out to raise money against that sold books at the time. If you recall, the pitch at the time was, and eventually it will become the everything store. Right now it's an online bookstore. It will become the everything store, right? He was pitching that from the beginning. It took him a decade to get there, even having much more than books on the site. But he was projecting that from the beginning. I believe that if we do this part of it right, we can get here. And that was a big part of why investors got interested. They were like, online bookstore? Okay, cool. Online everything store? A lot cooler. Be more interested in that.
Also, if you recall, for all of the 90s, he was the laughing stock because that company never made any money. And the idea was that it would never make any money. And ironically, it really didn't until they went into a totally different business, which was their web services business, which is what made all the money, right? But that's sort of the point. Like, you figure it out. You find other ways that you can monetize, right, and get out there. Now, it doesn't always work, right? That is literally the nature of startups. And I think for you and I, Ryan, grizzled veterans that have been at this forever, we kind of forget that when people are stepping into this for the first time, even their first few years into it, it takes some adjusting. That's us coaxing people throughout the week when we talk to all the founders on our platform, saying, I get it. This sounds scary. I get it. Saying what you're about to say sounds batshit crazy. But guess what? It might actually happen.
It's funny. One of the places I see this manifest is not exactly the same thing, but it's around founder-led sales, right? And when I'm leading the customer workshops on Monday and Fridays, founders in the accelerator, one of the things that comes up all the time is like, I just really don't like doing founder-led sales. Why? Because I have to tell people things I'm not really sure of yet, right? It's making claims, right? It's trying to push people across the line, trying to get them to say yes to your product on things that maybe haven't ever done before. Maybe you have, but you don't feel really comfortable saying it. I always look, do you believe that if they buy from you, they will be better off? Yeah, of course. Do you believe that your solution adequately meets their needs? Yeah, of course. You believe that they're going to pay you less than the value they get back? Yeah, of course. It's like, then what's the holdup here, right? If you believe all those things and you believe you can make it true, then it is actually your duty to get that person to pay you because they're going to be better off after they do, right? And the same thing is project things as startup founders, whether that's to our customers, to our investors, to our staff. It's incumbent on us to do that calculus first, to be like, is it reasonable to believe this could come true in a reasonable amount of time, right? You were telling a story about the conversation that you were in where, you guys answered simultaneously in opposite directions. We sort of had an implicit agreement early on at Startups.com between Elliot and I with consulting was like, look, man, go and tell people what you need to tell people to get them excited and get them into projects, as long as you truly believe that I can get it done within like a 2-week period, because that was our typical delivery time, right? As long as you believe I can do it, and you're not stretching that belief and pumping me up more than you should be, we're cool, right? And I knew that we were going to go out and tell people we could do things we'd never done before, right? When you have the right attitude and the right energy and the right team, that actually feels amazing. So I think that's something else I don't want to gloss over here, is that this isn't always uncomfortable. There are times where saying yes to something you've never done before will start to feel really incredible, particularly once you've said yes a few times and failed and said yes a few times and succeeded. All of a sudden you realize, like, look, there's not as much at stake on the downside as there is on the upside. Because again, if we never try, if we never stick our neck at it, 22-year-old Will had never said yes to something to a room he never should have been in at that age, right? Like, your patent haven't even expired yet. You couldn't have been sold as generic at that age.
I couldn't rent a car.
You're working with one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies on the planet, right?
Yeah.
Never should have happened, and it did. And that's how you got where you are.
You bet. And also, as I'm watching this with, the next generation, when I say the next generation, I'm talking like our daughters, right? This past weekend, my daughter was at a craft fair. She's got a business where she's building bracelets now. She's like her third business now. And she's building bracelets. And she's been working so hard because, summer started. So she's got the whole summer to work on this. And every night she's building these bracelets, she's building inventory, right? And on Saturday, she had an all-day crafts fair that she attended. She set up her booth and everything, and she's selling her bracelets, right? Going into it, she's like, Daddy, I've only got like 60 bracelets. I'm like, how the hell do you find time to make 60 bracelets, right? And so she's like, I only have 60 bracelets. Like,
How many elves are living in our basement right now?
I know, it's unbelievable. And I'm like, what happens if I sell out of all these? And I'm like, sweetheart, that's the goal. Like, that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, that's a high quality problem. We celebrate. We go home early.
But she's so logical. She's like, but people are going to come to my store and they're going to want products that I don't have anymore. I'm like, yeah, sweetheart, that's the goal.
Pre-order for the next batch. Yeah.
You sell all of them. And she sold most of them, which was amazing to watch. And just one epilogue to that, which I thought was hilarious. You'll appreciate given the time. We took the amount of money that she made. She made like a few $100s. It's actually a lot. I mean, relative to what she was selling. And I put it into ChatGPT. I wanted to show her something. I said, if Summer takes the amount of money that she just made and puts it into a fund that compounds at the same rate of return as the S&P 500 last year, which was insane, right? It's like over 20%, right?
Yeah, you picked a pretty good year, but for the fun of the math, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, right? How much money would she have when she retires? And I can't remember what the number was, but it was like over $1 million, right? It's amazing compounding, whatever. And her head exploded.
The power of compounding math and youth, right? When you combine those two things, my God.
It's unbelievable. And then she was like, Dad, I need to sell more bracelets.
Yes.
Like, that's exactly the answer. And so you have to say yes. You have to push, right? You have to do more. It's so fun to watch, but I think it's also so fun to coach, to tell people that here's what you can do that you've never done before. Because think about it. Almost every job that we have or the path that we have in life is this on the rails guided path, right? There's no version where we take a fourth grader and put them in 12th grade and say, figure it out. I mean, think about it. Like, everything is so incremental. Everything is so guarded. We're so worried about you failing that we never get a chance to push you further.
And we don't allow you to reach forward.
That's what I'm saying, right?
Right. It's not allowed, right? To defend against the backslide, which again, like in startups, like the risk of the backslide is so small. What are you risking? It hasn't done anything yet. Right? Like, I know people like they get so worried about backsliding to zero, and I'm like $1,000 MRR. Which look, I'm not sneezing at $1,000 MRR. It's $1,000 more than they had when they started. That's amazing, but we're talking about $1,000 gap there, right? Like, I think sometimes we blow these things so far out of proportion. Like failure is going to be epic. When you put it in those terms, like failure is if this $1,000, right? Like it's $1,000. It's a part-time minimum wage job. To make up that delta if you needed to. So I think we have to be careful about putting too much emphasis on the backslide. Sorry, back to high school.
Oh, no, all good. But we're also competing fundamentally with other startups that are willing to say yes. And so that's what we talk about when we talk about putting your pitch deck out there in your financials. And you're saying, hey, in 4 years, I'm going to make $3 million. And like, okay, cool. You're competing against pitch decks that are saying in 4 years, they're going to make $50 million, right? Remember that you're not working in a vacuum here where it's just about your business. In this case, you're competing for capital, but also where you're competing for customers, right? If you're competing with customers against other startups that are willing to stretch, that are willing to kind of push themselves, you're going to lose, right? Saying no to everything in an environment of yes, you will lose by definition, right? Unless you're a financial services company, in which case.
Yep. It's a big part of how we got business early on, right? We said yes to people that other people were saying no to. And we're like, we will figure it out. We will work hard. We will work harder. We will help you figure out how to raise funds for this slightly less than traditional or obvious fundraisable business, right?
Yep. It's also a muscle that you build. And I think this is important to touch on, right? For 30 years, I've been saying yes to things that are way beyond my capabilities, way beyond my, and not just in business, in personal life and everything else like that, just tons of stuff that like, I have no business getting into. Again, with the house, I'm doing architecture, 3D modeling, 3D rendering, carpentry. Like
I was going to say, I was picturing that really complicated 3D model that you built in SketchUp over a 2-year period. Yeah, like you had no business doing that, but you did it. And now that thing is going to pop out of the ground over the next year.
It's wild to watch. And so I look at this and I say, that is a trained muscle that I have. I have a trained muscle that says there's just things I haven't done yet. And it's interesting. I was having a conversation with Noah, our creative director, yesterday about this, and we were talking about, the forces of AI, and creatives are obviously pretty up in arms about AI. And he's talking about, it's going to replace jobs and it's going to take out creativity, and there's some truth to that. But I said, but it's also going to create an extension for people to say yes to things they haven't done yet. AI, and you and I are in the same boat right now with ChatGPT and tools like this. It's like my right arm right now. It's unbelievable. I'm in AI 4 hours a day. And now every single thing I can think, AI can tell me how to do it. And I think about that saying, my innate ability to say yes to everything and figure it out just got supercharged, because now I don't even have to wonder how I'm going to figure it out. I just need to know what I need to do, and AI is gonna instruct me and guide me and walk me through how to get it done. It's unbelievable. I mean, the world that we're in to be able to do this.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. Now, yeah, the ability to say yes just went up exponentially. That is for sure.
Unbelievable, right? Like, there are so many things that I was incapable of doing. Advanced math would be one of them, right? But now, if I'm doing super complicated things, again, like when people hear that I'm building a house, Ryan, you could back me up, like every friggin' details to this house, right? Like
literally every single detail. I've watched this guy. Yeah.
Every detail. Like I'm doing load calcs for all the electrical of the house. I'm wiring the entire house, like top to bottom, creating what sub panel structures there are, you name it, right?
That was my favorite of your GPT adventures of late, was having it conduct the calculation based on average rates and load and code in Ohio. It was unreal.
Yeah, it's perfect, right? But that's my point. Like, I wouldn't ever feel comfortable saying yes to that. But now when I talk to...
Well, and the burden of actually doing it would have been so high before that it wouldn't have even made sense, because you could have said, the reason you would have said no to it was it wouldn't have made sense. It would have been so much less efficient than paying somebody who already knew. So if you had to go learn all of that and then do the math and the work, right, to come up with the calculation, it doesn't make any sense. But when you can shortcut those processes and take away the heavy lifting piece of it, then it totally makes sense. Right? Saying yes to that now all of a sudden makes sense, which is crazy, right? Because I think it also forces us to reconsider a lot of decisions. So to your point around, it's a muscle that you build. I've had to untrain a bunch of muscles because of things like this.
Yep.
Right. I've had to start to say yes to doing things differently that I've done in the same way for 10, 15 years, because all of a sudden there's a reason to say yes to doing it different.
I'm in Excel all the time, or Google Sheets, right? And there's always been like a million formulas that I've always wanted to be able to create, like really complicated formulas, right? And now if I think it like, hey, my projections or my models should be able to do this. Hey, GPT, write me a formula that does this and explain to me how you did it. And I'm like, oh, damn, that would have been useful 30 years ago, right? In 5 seconds, I have it, right? Like, my point is, like, that muscle has so much applicability in so many things that you do. I apply the yes muscle, right, to everything. I'm like, screw it, let's just figure it out. Sometimes it fails in a colossal manner, right? Just to be clear, it doesn't always work, right? But it works enough that when you get good at it, it's kind of a superpower. You know what I mean?
It's funny, man. I have this, my phrase is, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out, right? I use this all the time, right? Because I believe that we will. Now, what I didn't say is we'll make it work. That's different. Or it will be okay. That's different. Or it will be great. That's different, right? So my wife didn't love this phrase for a long time. She was like, you always say that, we'll figure it out. And she's like, and it doesn't always work out. And I said, yeah, I didn't say that. I said, we'll figure it out. It's very different. What I meant is,
we'll get in,
we'll figure it out. Guess what? I figured out it didn't work. I figured out that was bad. I figured out this does work sometimes. And so I think once we got that clarity around that, and she just understood that, like, I'm always going to be willing to say yes and try,
right,
and accept the consequences. That's fine, right? And so, like, once we got to that point, I think it became a lot easier for her to tolerate we'll figure it out, which I think at some point she just started to take as, he's not really thinking about this. He's just going to, like, throw himself at it and see what happens.
Right.
Entirely wrong, except they're not thinking. Right.
Yeah, and look, there just aren't that many things that you can say yes to that are so unforgivable in the outcome that there's no way to fix it, right? There just isn't.
Yeah, coin, man. The backslide is just not that severe, right? When you compare it to, right? We talk about this a lot, man, like in terms of like ad costs and stuff like that, trying to figure out like how do we make this work better? How do we do this? Like, look, you can only minimize your ad costs so much. You can only go from wherever you are to zero, right? That's pretty finite. Your revenue can go way up to the other side, right? So what we want to do is maximize for upside. You can only cut so far before it's not working, right? You can't keep saying no to doing more. At some point, you have to say yes to that. And make it work, right? We'll figure it out.
Overthinking your startup because you're going it alone? You don't have to, and honestly, you shouldn't, because instead, you can learn directly from peers who've been in your shoes. Connect with bootstrapped founders and the advisors helping them win in the Startups.com community. Check out the Startups.com community at www.startups.com to see if it's for you. Could be just the thing you need. I hope to see you inside.